Young people's experiences, ideas, choices, and preferences help shape the future of cities. This episode of the Bright Young Minds show on Future Cities Africa is with Celiwe Mabaso, a seasoned communications and sustainability professional with a specialisation in community development and impact investment, currently working as the Senior Social Performance Manager for BTE Renewables. Celiwe, welcome. It's nice to have you on the show. Can you give us a brief introduction to your role at BTE Renewables and why it is important?
My name is Celiwe Mabaso. I'm an economic development and communications specialist. My work truly entails working with communities, identifying some of their challenges, and designing programs that meet some of those social challenges in the communities. I'm currently working for BTE Renewables as the Senior Social Performance Manager. And in that role, I lead a strategy design and program design and implementation for BTE Renewables in South Africa across their portfolio. Why my job is important? As part of the Renewable Energy IPP program from the Department of Energy, IPPs are required to commit a certain portion of their revenue to the development of communities around where the assets are. And my role is important because myself and my team assist the business in identifying programs that would best uplift those communities that surround the solar and the wind farms that we operate in.
What are some of the major challenges that you face in your work or in the sectors that you operate in, and how are these challenges being addressed?
One of the major challenges we face in our communities is that in many instances, communities don't understand what renewable energy is and how the programs can benefit our communities. What we've done and what I've done in my role is educate the community on the benefits of renewable energy projects, but also spend a little bit more time on the ground trying to understand what the challenges of the communities are, and also spend a lot of time co creating some of the solutions to the problems that the community has identified. So, the most important thing in community development and impact investment is not imposing the views of the organization onto the community, but rather spending time with the community to understand what they need and how willing they are to own those solutions and lead and allowing the community to lead the process of investment.
I'd like to know, how do you measure the success of the projects that you're involved in?
Once we've identified a program in the community, what we normally do is we do a baseline assessment. For this, I'll use an example of a maths and science program where we're trying to increase the number of learners who finish matric with maths and science and have an increased interest in STEM. So, what we would do in that instance is we would go into the school in partnership with the Department of Basic Education, and we would do an assessment on the learners who are currently doing maths and science to try and identify where the gaps are and why there's no pull through until grade 12. And then we would design a program based on the gaps identified. How we ensure success, so how we ensure success of that program is we would then do measurements on a quarterly basis to see if there's been any improvements in the marks of the learners and if there's any need to adjust that intervention as the program goes.
Sticking to measurement, how do you measure behavioral change?
In some instances, the programs are to improve behavior. In some instances, the schools would say there's psychosocial challenges that impact children's behavior in the schools. And what we would do is we would then do qualitative assessments of, what the views of the teachers are and what the learners are feeling themselves. And we would also have focus groups with those learners and teachers just to understand what the language, what language are they using, how are they speaking about themselves and the environment that they're in. And we would continue then doing those quarterly, monthly check-ins just to see if there's been any changes in attitude, behavior. And in most instances, especially with schools, changes in behavior results in changes in marks as well.
Celiwe, what are the key steps and requirements to creating thriving local economies?
The key steps to creating a thriving local economy is to involve everyone. Many programs, especially in South Africa, have a huge focus on a certain designated group. So it's either youth or women, and we find ourselves missing out on some of the other groups and populations within the country. I think that, to create thriving local economies, we need to involve everybody that is actively involved in that economy, whether it's an old person, a child, a young person. Let's get those people to collectively create some of those thriving local economies. Another aspect that I think we are neglecting is collaboration within the region. So within Africa, the one example I really like is how Kenya has managed to drive entrepreneurship from a young age and the use of technology. One of the things I think of is the introduction of M-Pesa. M-Pesa was first introduced in South Africa and it struggled to take off. But when you look at how well M-Pesa is doing in Kenya, there's something that they're doing right. And I think we need to spend a bit more time as African countries sharing best practices on how certain technologies work and how we can introduce them into our countries as well.
As a young African living in South Africa, how are you currently making sense of what's going on in the world and how do you stay sane?
How do I make sense of what's happening in the world right now? So there is quite a bit going on. We've just come out of a pandemic. There's war in the Ukraine. Africa has its own challenges. South Africa has its own political challenges as well. As much as keep abreast of what's happening in the news, I do believe that as a young person, the only way to make sense of what's going on in the world and in our country is to become an active citizen. Not just active in politics, not just active in hashtags, but active on the ground. And I've got the fortune of working in a role that allows me to try and address some of the challenges that I see every day. And I challenge other young people, even if your role or your job doesn't allow you, it's not centered around finding solutions, but we are the only ones that can fix and make the country what we want it to be. And if we spend a lot of our time criticizing and hashtagging things that we cannot influence, we won't see the change we want to see. So we spend more time on the ground, being an active citizen, making the changes that you want to see so that we can influence from the bottom up.
On the topic of cities, what is your vision for the future of cities? What would you like to see? What is standing in this vision, and how do you think these barriers can be overcome?
My vision for future cities, with a focus on South Africa, is more integrated cities. I think we've still got, the country's worked very hard to move past ills of the past, one of them being apartheid and segregation. But we haven't really found a way where we are truly integrated within our cities and within our spaces. And that's the future I see for myself, where we're not afraid to go into certain spaces. We're not afraid to have certain conversations. How do we do that? We revitalize the places that were formerly no-go areas, our townships, in a city where, we've seen a lot of neglect happening across the provinces. Revitalize those areas and make them more accessible so that people from different walks of life get a chance to integrate, to think and to co-create what they think the future of the city or the country should look like. What's standing in the way of us achieving this is letting go of some of the old beliefs that we might have had and some of the fears as well that we might have had that were created by, situations from the past. I really love what we call in South Africa Ama2K Gen Zs, because they are truly challenging us to do things differently, to think differently, and to also speak our minds without any fear. And that's what still, I challenge myself and those who are my peers to learn from the younger generation on how to challenge ourselves to do things that make us feel uncomfortable.
And in closing, what advice do you have for young people to remain hopeful of the future?
My advice to young people to stay hopeful Be bright in the corner where you are. We might not all have the resources that we need, but we can make a change wherever we are. So if you are in a place with limited resources and you don't have internet or anything like that, but you know how to form a youth club, you know how to teach children how to dance, you know how to teach children how to read, how to write, I challenge you to do the little that you can wherever you are and to inspire those around you because inspired people inspire other people.
A big thank you to Celiwe Mabaso for this insightful conversation on the Bright Young Minds show on Future Cities Africa. Youth is the future of African cities.